Meghan Markle feels that a big newspaper was very unfair and did something against the law. She believes that when they printed a letter she wrote, they left out the most important parts on purpose. She thinks they were trying to make her look like a bad person to the whole world. This caused a lot of trouble for the royal family and created a big mess between the Windsors. It was a very sad time for everyone involved. A man named Tom Bower came on a show to talk about this. He is a writer who spends a lot of time looking for the truth. He checks every story to see if it is real or fake. He knows that Meghan talks a lot about being authentic. This is a big word that means being your real self. She tells everyone to live their truth and be honest. She says these things from her very big and fancy house in a place called Montecito. But things are starting to get very interesting. It seems like the truth might be different than what she tells people. It turns out that Meghan might have told the royal family some very big secrets that were not true. People in England sometimes call these porkies. She may have said these things right before she married Prince Harry. Now, those old stories are starting to come apart in ways that no one expected. It is like a pretty fairy tale book is losing its pages. Some parts of her life were never supposed to be seen by the public. Everything started to change when her sister, Samantha Markle, gave some small clues. These clues were like tiny seeds planted in a garden. They grew into a giant mystery that the whole internet is talking about. The perfect image Meghan showed everyone is starting to have big cracks in it. People are now looking at old records from the year 1997. Those papers were hidden for a very important reason. When a story that everyone believes starts to fall into pieces, it becomes a very exciting and scary mystery for the whole world to watch. Tom Bower is a very smart man who does a lot of work to find the real story. He does not just listen to one person, he looks at every side of the puzzle. He noticed that Meghan tells everyone her life is an open book. But then he found out that some of the things she told the royals might have been little lies. These are things she said a long time ago. Now, these old stories are starting to unravel. It is happening in a way that is surprising everyone. The glossy and pretty story that everyone bought might have some dark parts. These were parts of her past that were meant to stay in the dark forever. It all started when Samantha Markle dropped some hints. These hints started a fire on the internet that will not go out. The polished image of the Duchess is starting to show big cracks. There are records from 1997 that were buried deep in the ground for a reason. Mapping out the life of a famous star is usually very easy. You can see where they went to school and what their first jobs were. You can find old photos of them when they were young and trying to be famous. You can trace their whole journey from the beginning to the end. But with Meghan, things are very weird and confusing. Even the best writers in the world, like Tom Bower and Andrew Morton, hit a big wall. These men are professionals who have written books about Princess Diana and very rich kings. They know how to find secrets and connect the dots. But they both said it was a huge challenge to find the real Meghan Markle. They could not find the person she was before she met Prince Harry. It was like someone stole half of the pieces to a giant jigsaw puzzle. The middle of the picture was just a big blank space. For a person who talks so much about being real, this is a very big contradiction. She tells people not to pretend to be someone else. She even tells them not to dress like Princess Diana. But parts of her own past are completely blurry and hard to see. The irony is not lost on people who are watching. Irony is when something happens that is the opposite of what you expect. The people on the internet started to notice a pattern. They saw that the timeline of her life did not flow smoothly. When she talked about being a young woman, there were big gaps of time. She would talk about her college days at a place called Northwestern. But then the story would jump ahead very fast. It felt like watching a movie where the middle part was cut out. Suddenly, she is a star on a TV show called Suits. Everything in between feels like it was fast-forwarded by a remote control. Everyone has parts of their past that they do not tell the whole world about. That is a normal thing for regular people. But when you build your whole career on being honest and transparent, people will ask questions. They start to wonder why your story has these big empty spots. The story Meghan told the world looked very clean and perfect for television. It was a modern fairy tale about a girl who became a real-life princess. It was polished and packaged for magazine covers. But the more people looked, the more they wondered what was left out. Why did famous writers struggle to find basic facts? Why did the timeline feel like it had been edited? People wondered if she had changed herself so many times that no one knew who she really was. These were not just guesses. These were questions from people who spent years doing real research for their books. The narrative was almost too perfect, and people wanted to know what was hiding underneath the polish. For many years, the story was very simple to understand. Meghan was the victim who was treated badly. Her family, especially her sister Samantha, were the mean relatives. The media told everyone that Samantha was just jealous. They said she wanted to make money from Meghan's fame. Most people believed this and ignored her. People liked the idea of a princess rising above her mean family to find love. But then something shifted in the wind. Samantha stopped being angry and loud. She stopped running to the newspapers with big accusations. Instead, she started to talk in a very calm and careful way. Every word she spoke felt like it was planned. She started giving tiny hints instead of telling the whole story. She talked about stories being buried and the past being cleaned up. This made her look very different to the public. Samantha did not just yell, she suggested things. In the world of fame, being quiet and giving hints is much more powerful than being loud. When someone is screaming, it is easy to say they are crazy and ignore them. But when someone speaks carefully and leaves things unsaid, that is when people start paying attention. It is like a mystery movie where the narrator gives you one clue and then stops talking. You want to know more. For years, Meghan acted like Samantha did not even exist. She tried to write her out of her life story completely, but Samantha did not need to force her way back in. She just needed to plant some doubt. She had an energy that said, "I know a secret, but you aren't ready to hear it yet." This was very bad for Meghan's carefully managed image. Suddenly, people did not see Samantha as a mean sister. They saw her as a witness who knew the truth. A shocking story came out about a birth certificate for a daughter from 21 years ago. The tone of the news was not what people expected. There was no bitterness or anger. It was just a person stating a fact. This made people see Samantha in a new way. The story flipped around. Instead of the jealous sister, she became the person who might actually know a big secret. She did not need photos or big proof yet. She just needed to make people wonder. And everyone did start to wonder very much. Within hours, the internet went crazy. People were watching every old interview frame by frame. They analyzed every single word Meghan had ever said. YouTubers looked at her body language from years ago. Amateur detectives who have normal jobs suddenly became full-time investigators. The whole thing grew very fast like a snowball. Samantha never said exactly what was hidden. She only suggested that something was there. And that was enough to start a giant investigation. When the internet finds a mystery, it does not slow down. It builds a whole machine to find the answer. People who never cared about Meghan before were suddenly awake at night looking at old forums. They were trying to connect dots that might not even belong together. Samantha understood something very important. You do not need to prove everything right away. You just need to make people ask questions. One small comment or a strategic silence can change the entire conversation. The news websites loved the chaos because it got them many clicks. Everyone was winning except for the people in the middle of the mess. The pressure on the Duchess just kept building up every single day. With all this attention on the past, people started to dig very deep. And that is when things got really wild. Someone decided to do something that most people would never think to do. They wrote a letter to the office that keeps birth records in California. They didn't do it for fun. They did it because there was a big question online about the year 1997. They wanted to know if something happened that year that Meghan keeps a secret. The office wrote back and said they found a record. It showed that a woman named Rachel Meghan Markle had a child in 1997. But there was a big catch. All the details were locked away in a safe. They could not say the name of the child or give any other information. The records were there, but they were hidden from the eyes of the public. People have babies all the time, and sometimes records stay private. That is not weird on its own. But the timing of when these records were locked is what made people's eyes go wide. They were locked in December of 2018. Think about what was happening then. Meghan had just married Prince Harry in May. By December, she was a full member of the royal family. She was dealing with more fame and more news than ever before. That is exactly when someone decided that those old papers from 1997 needed to be locked up tight. You have to wonder why they waited 21 years to hide them. Why do it right in the middle of her new royal life? It seems very strange to wait 2 decades to seal a paper unless there was a very specific reason to do it right then. It wasn't just birth papers that were hidden. People found that things about her first marriage to a man named Trevor were also very hard to find. It was like a giant digital eraser had gone through her entire past. It removed or hid anything that might make people ask questions. Even her first wedding ceremony was very strange. There were almost no family members there. They just used strangers from the street to be the legal witnesses. For someone who now preaches about authenticity and connection and family values, the pattern of secrecy was becoming impossible to ignore. This was the moment when casual curiosity turned into serious investigation. When people stopped asking, "I wonder if there is something here," and moved to, "What exactly are they hiding?" Damage control usually gets more attention than the original problem. By sealing the papers, it made people obsessed with finding out what was inside them. The internet went into a total frenzy trying to find the secret. A man's name was attached to every theory, Joe Giuliano. Suddenly, he was everywhere you looked. There were videos with big red arrows pointing at him. People called him the secret husband or the missing piece of the puzzle. They said he was the connection to the papers from 1997. This was a very dangerous story. Investigators worked hard on this idea. They found old photos and looked at every date and place. They were convinced that he was the guy Meghan was hiding. They called him the phantom husband because he was like a ghost from her past. It was the perfect story for a movie, a secret lover who was left behind when fame came calling, a relationship that had to be erased to make room for a prince. It was an inconvenient truth that did not fit the pretty story of the self-made woman. But there was a massive problem with this story. It was not true. The more people looked at Joe Giuliano, the more the story fell apart. There were no marriage papers in any public office. No one could prove that the relationship ever happened. Photos that looked suspicious turned out to have simple explanations. Every single piece of proof turned into nothing when people looked closer. The foundation was not strong. It looked solid from far away, but up close, it was just a bunch of guesses. The Joe Giuliano story died out completely. Looking back now, you have to wonder something. Was the whole Joe Giuliano story just a big distraction? Magicians use a trick called misdirection. They make you look at one hand while the other hand does the trick. They want you to stay focused on a tiny movement while they do the real work right in front of you. You are so busy looking at what they want you to see that you miss the truth. While the internet was looking for Joe, the real story was sitting right there in front of them. It was not about a secret boyfriend from years ago. It was about her family. It had always been about the people who were actually there. It was about the people who knew what happened during those missing years in her life. Meghan's family were the ones who had been ignored for a long time. People thought they did not fit the story everyone wanted to believe. But once the Joe Giuliano story ended, the investigators did not give up. They learned from their mistake. Instead of looking for strangers and mystery men, they looked at the people in the family photos. They looked at the people whose connection to Meghan was real and proven. That is when things got really uncomfortable, because what they found wasn't some stranger who could be easily dismissed. It was someone who had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Someone who had appeared in family contexts. Someone whose resemblance to the Markle family was about to raise questions that could not be easily answered. The investigators regrouped and changed their whole plan. They stopped looking for unknown people and looked at the family tree they already knew. They zeroed in on a cousin named Sean Johnson. This is where the story gets very specific and a bit scary. Online detectives looked at images of a young person in family photos. This person was often called Noel. They didn't just say they looked similar. They did a deep analysis. They looked at the ears, the smile, and the bone structure of the face. The story started to feel less like a rumor and more like something that was buried a long time ago. It started at a crack in Meghan's perfect image. Genetics do not usually lie. The young person in the photos looked so much like the Markle family that it was shocking. Resemblance was more than just a coincidence. It was a genetic mirror that made everyone stop and look. This led to a big idea. What if the family was changed on purpose? What if a baby from that missing time in 1997 was raised by relatives instead of by Meghan? This would be done to protect a young woman's future career as a star. It sounds like a story from a soap opera on TV. But remember that phrase everyone keeps saying, the story Harry heard was not the real truth. Had Harry been told about a pregnancy from a long time ago, would the palace have let them get married if they knew? This is the billion-dollar question. If any of this is true, her whole public persona was a lie to hide the truth. This kind of plan has happened before in Hollywood history. Sometimes, if a young star had a baby, they would let a relative raise it as their own. The child stays in the family, but the paperwork is changed. The biological parents act like cousins or siblings while the grandparents take the lead. Meghan's team is reportedly very worried that the pressure is getting too high. Allegedly, Meghan said that everyone in the family knows the secret, but no one talks about it. It stays inside the private family circle where regular people cannot see it. If this idea is true, it explains why Meghan is so angry at her father and her sister. Her anger seems much bigger than it should be if they were just talking to the news. The level of fury and the cutting of ties seems very extreme, but if her father and sister know a big secret that could destroy her brand, then her anger makes sense. That information could dismantle everything she has built. Her brand, her image, and her money would all be in danger. Her first husband reportedly has photos that could change everything we thought we knew about her past. DNA tests do not lie. They cannot be changed with good PR or smart words. If a genetic test happened and proved these secrets, the game would be over for good. No amount of carefully worded statements could put the secret back in the box once it was out for everyone to see. If there was a baby back in 1997, the whole timeline of her life becomes a giant puzzle. It raises questions about basic biology and human health that do not have easy answers. This is where the story moves from interesting to being a total disaster for her career. The speculation moves from simple family fights to serious questions that can end her fame. There is also a big difference in the story about her first husband, Trevor. He has been very quiet this whole time. He has not done any interviews or written a book. He stayed silent while his ex-wife became one of the most talked about women on the planet. But sources say that Trevor knows a secret that contradicts the story Meghan has sold to the world. The allegation is that Trevor knows she had a very big surgery while they were together. This surgery would make it impossible for her to have babies in the normal way. If that claim is true, then how did she have Archie and Lilibet? The basic biology simply does not work. This is why everyone on the internet is talking about fake bumps. Before you say people are just being mean, understand that they are trying to figure out a story that does not match the facts. If the papers from 1997 are real, she could have a child. But if the surgery happened later, then the royal pregnancies would be physically impossible without a lot of medical help. This help would involve surrogates or donors that were never mentioned to the public. It might even be a secret from some people inside the royal palace. This matters because the monarchy has very strict rules about how babies are born. It is not just a formality. There are actual laws about who can be an heir to the throne. The rule is called born of the body. It has governed royal succession for hundreds of years. If Meghan hid the truth about the kids' origins or her own health, it would be a massive deception. This would be a huge lie directed at the monarchy itself. It is a much bigger deal than lying on a resume or a dating app. This kind of misrepresentation could change how the children are seen in the line for the throne. It could change who inherits money and titles. The scale of this problem is huge. The silence from Meghan's team is what makes people more suspicious. If someone told a giant lie about you and your children, wouldn't you show the proof to stop them? Wouldn't you take them to court right away? Wouldn't you do everything you could to prove the story was wrong? But that has not happened. The questions are still not answered. Her health records are still private. The speculation keeps spreading because there is no real information to stop it from growing. The lack of a response tells us a lot. When someone makes a very specific and serious claim, you expect a fast answer. People naturally wonder why there is no simple denial. Why allow these rumors to stay alive if they are fake? The answer might be simple, or it might be very complicated. But without being honest and open, the rumors will only get louder. In the past, Meghan tried to erase things from the internet, but those things raised even more questions about her money. Before she was famous on TV, she spent a lot more money than she made. Detectives have noticed this pattern many times. Her spending was much higher than her paychecks from small acting roles. Meghan went on international trips and wore clothes that cost thousands of dollars. She was always at fancy parties in Europe. Who paid for all of this? This was long before she met Harry. This was supposed to be the time when she was struggling to get acting jobs. But the evidence of her struggling is not there. Instead, we see her in elite circles that usually do not welcome unknown actresses. These are places where you need a lot of money or a lot of power to get in. Meghan had a go-getter attitude and her own career, but somehow the doors were always open for her. This matches the pattern of her carefully wiped history. When you build a brand about social justice and women's empowerment, you want to hide anything that makes you look bad. You want to make sure your story looks perfect. So you erase your old blogs and photos. You cut off old friends. It is a giant cleanup operation to keep your image pretty, but people you leave behind still have their memories. They still know what really happened. You cannot remove your family from the public record. They might decide they do not want to protect your story anymore. Samantha has said she has information about who gave Meghan money during those years. She says she has names and dates of the people who paid for her fancy life in Europe. Samantha's claims are not about small family fights. She is saying the story Harry heard was a work of fiction. She is saying that the way Meghan moved through rich social circles tells a completely different story. If Harry was attracted to a self-made woman, but actually married someone with a secret background, that is a huge lie. It is a massive misrepresentation of who she really was. To make things even more tense, a letter appeared that was linked to Samantha. It explicitly talked about hidden matters and deceptions. Analysts argued about whether the letter was real or a fake, but the information in the letter matched the other rumors that were already out there. The timing of the letter was a total nightmare for Meghan's PR team. It arrived exactly when she was trying to move away from royal drama and focus on her lifestyle brand. She wanted to sell a story about living your best life. But then the letter appeared and reminded everyone of her complicated history and family secrets. You cannot sell a perfect life when people are shouting about your past. The pattern is impossible to ignore now. The missing years, the unexplained money, and the sealed records all point to a big secret. Each piece might have an answer, but when you put them all together, the questions only get bigger and louder. The most important proof is not what people say, but what is not being said. If these stories were totally fake and mean, why hasn't Meghan taken Samantha to court? This is a woman who has sued major newspapers before. She has the best lawyers and plenty of money. She clearly wants to protect her name. So why let a relative say these specific things about a secret baby or medical lies? Why allow these accusations to grow and spread? The answer is simple. If you fight back in court, you have to show the truth. You have to show your medical records and your birth papers. That would be an impossible choice. Both paths lead to a bad place. One way means everyone gets to see your private records. People who know the truth would have to talk under oath. The very papers you spent millions to protect would be out in the open. The other way means you stay quiet and let the rumors grow. Your reputation gets hurt every day. The questions never stop. But at least the secret stays hidden from the public. This seems to be the choice she is making for now. But reputation management says you must respond to serious claims. If you can easily prove someone is lying, you do it. The absence of that response is its own kind of answer. We are left with a situation where a famous person talks about transparency but keeps her records in a safe. The family member who was called jealous now seems like they might be telling the truth. Records from one particular year stay hidden under very weird circumstances. The public that loved the fairy tale is now asking which parts were real. Even if the Joe Giuliano story was wrong, it showed that people sense something is missing. They haven't found all the pieces yet, but they are looking. Things always come out eventually, no matter how hard you try to hide them. If the whole truth comes out, it will destroy the image of being real and authentic. Eventually, the truth always wins between the Windsors.